welcome to Scorched Earth and a reading for the sign of Scorpio, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of May. I hope you are well, and I know these are late. Thank you for waiting for me. I do appreciate that. Using the Llewellyn tarot for you today. Now, if the reading resonates and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. The link for that will be down in the description box below. Obviously, if you support me on Patreon, you get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost. And please do be aware that there are scammers operating in the comments. I can barely believe I'm having to address this again. I had a similar issue with Instagram last year. This seems a little less sophisticated than the Instagram version of it, but there is someone claiming to be me in the comments who is offering, readings if you text this number, and it's not me. You can tell me because my name will appear in like a lozenge, and it'll say like, I don't know, 38.7k subscribers after it. If it doesn't say that, then you are not talking to me. Please do not be fooled by it, because people got taken in by it last year and it was devastating. So let's all just be a little bit smarter about these things than the scammers think we are, So let's have a look and see what's going on with you, Scorpio. Can I have 3 cards for Scorpio? There's the first one, 10 of Wands in reverse. I like that. Current energy for Scorpio, please. We have the 7 of Wands in your current energy, and what is coming towards Scorpio for May? Wheel of Fortune. I like this. So at the bottom of the deck we have the 3 of Pentacles, and it's followed by the Hermit, which is interesting because it feels more like a kind of turning away from someone, something. I mean, we'll come back to this a little bit, but there's a turning within rather than turning away. That's a better way of putting it. Because the Hermit's pointing directly at this 5 of Swords underneath. There's the 3 of Pentacles, so you see it. But we have the Hermit and we have the 5 of Swords there. And as you can see, the Hermit is taking his light to whatever this 5 of Swords is. Now, sometimes the 5 of Swords, and particularly in this deck, can indicate a Pyrrhic victory of sorts. And so it can be, could be a revisiting of that. Somewhere where there was a Pyrrhic victory that you experienced, or one that somebody else experienced over you. But it seems to me like you're going back in and you are looking at this situation again. It is requiring you to turn away from something that you have been practically working on at this time, at the moment, right? Not for long, only for a brief period, I think. But it suggests there's some information to be mined here, some insight to be gotten for you that you haven't seen before. Let's get some clarifiers and see what the rest of the deck has to say. Tell me about this. We've got the 3 of Swords has appeared there. And we've got the King of Swords in the reverse, which is interesting. One more card here. And we've got the High Priestess showing up here. Tell me about the 7 of Wands. Wow, proper pirouetted out. We've got the 8 of Pentacles, 7 of Wands. We've got the Hanged Man and the Sun both appearing after that. There they are. And tell me about this Wheel of Fortune, please, for Scorpio. We have, rather delightfully, the Ace of Cups. Ooh! And the Page of Swords. Right. So, just like Cancer, you have at the bottom of the deck the 2 of Pentacles. It's an interesting energy. I mean, although it's pentacle energy, and it speaks for me about the way in which we, work-life balance sometimes, the way we have to juggle things to make everything work. It has the added component of some emotional turmoil in the background, right there. I think the 2 of Pentacles for me is probably the card that varies the most between decks. So, sometimes you've got, oh, God, that was my back. I needed to stretch, sorry. Sometimes we have people pulling off these incredible gymnastic feats in the 2 of Pentacles and looking really quite pleased with themselves that we're doing it. And then other times we have a look of, slight concern, like we've got here on this one. And other times we've got someone, looking completely despairing, you know, balanced on the end of a jetty, you know, with this complete maelstrom behind them. There seems to be a bit more consistency through the other cards, but this one speaks of a turmoil that is happening quite far back from you, but is nonetheless affecting you in some way. And we're trying to balance out these practical matters while we've got, you know, this kind of emotional chaos going on in the background. Now, whether the emotional chaos is yours or not would be, you know, a different question altogether. But given the cards that we've got coming up on the table here, it does feel to me like it's a past situation, just as although the Hermit is operating in the present, he is going back to look at a past situation. And of course, you know, we are in Mercury retrograde at the moment as I record this, at least in the shadow period, if we haven't quite gone into it properly yet. And we're in the middle of a really quite intense eclipse cycle. You know, we've got a Scorpio full moon happening next week too, which will no doubt affect you strongly. But it feels like this is a revisiting of an old situation, which these energies, you know, these cosmic energies would absolutely be supporting at this time. We've got the Ten of Wands showing up in the reverse, and I like that because it's an ending. Right, all tens are endings, and sometimes when you see this, it could be like an ending is delayed or it is, you know, blocked in some way. But actually, for you here, I feel that this is something that you have put the burden down on already. This is what this means here to me. It's like you're not carrying this with you anymore, because to carry it, as you have done for quite a long time, you just seem to have realised that it cost you a lot, right? It was energetically expensive, and frankly, you know, we've got better things that we can be putting our energy into at this time. But I just want to address these two cards together here before we bring the High Priestess in, because we've got the Three of Swords and the King of Swords. Now, this King of Swords can sometimes, when he's appearing here in the reverse, can refer to a lack of objectivity, you know, a lack of being able to see a situation properly for what it is. But the fact that he's here with the Three of Swords, and that sword in his hand just matches beautifully that sword there on the edge, on the left-hand side. It feels like the pain and the wounding, you've come to the conclusion, right, that the burden is choosing to carry this around, right? And so what you're doing is actually shifting from a thinking type energy, right, an intellectual type energy, to something much, much purer and something much more consistent, something much more in keeping with your energy, which is water, obviously, than this very air sign dominated set of cards here. Like again, I'm saying it's not something that's just happened. This is an old situation, how you've grown through it and grown past it, but you're finding your mind returning to it now. Now this High Priestess is feels like she's giving you some incredible insight. The Hermit and the High Priestess are working together here. There is your exploration of whatever this situation is, but there are new insights coming through. You might even be getting some really intense spiritual downloads about this situation, and being able to see a far bigger picture now that this situation occurred in, rather than the narrow confines of your life experience as it was at that time. Whatever it is, it feels really quite important. It's a sloughing off of some negative energy for sure, but that's already happened because you have already moved past this situation. It's just that there's a turning within because you're now aware that there is something there to see that you did not see before. Now, we're moving to your current energy. We've got this Seven of Wands, and you know, that can be a very defensive energy, or it can be a guarded, protected energy, right? It depends where the intent is. Whether it's coming from a place of fear, you know, I am feeling kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? I'm feeling like I'm under attack in some sort of way, so I need to strike first. That sort of thing, right? I'm going to just clobber you all with my big stick. Or whether there's something that's worth defending here, that, you know, you have the upper the higher ground on, as it were. And we don't see the protagonist. Well, this is the protagonist here, right? We don't see these assailants. They're all kind of invisible. They just see the end of their stick. Do they even really exist? It ties in quite nicely with this idea that there is something that you are going back to, something where perhaps you felt you were a little bit that you were justified in behaving the way that you did. But now looking back on it, and perhaps looking back on it with a little bit more compassion, you can see how they had arrived at where they were. Doesn't excuse it, doesn't make it any better, but it feels like that's the kind of energy that's coming in here for you. Because we've got the Eight of Pentacles, the Hanged Man, and the Sun. And this Hanged Man is a change in perspective. It's another Pisces card, just like the High Priestess is for me. And they're both cards that speak of passivity, right? There's not much going on the outside. It's all going on the inside. There's some internal change of perspective that's going on here. And an embracing of what is positive, right? For some of you, it might be an embracing of your inner child. If you've kind of finally cracked a nut, which is, to do with inner child work. If you've been struggling with something recently and you've realized that it's your inner child that's actually trying to make all of the decisions about this particular thing in front of you because of something that you experienced back in the past, then I can see this being kind of revelatory to you and being like, holy shit, right? I'm bringing this into my consciousness now, so I can tell the inner child to put that shit down. I will deal with it. Don't worry about it. Because out of the pair of us, I'm the one that's got the more experience in this situation. I'm the one who has worked through so much stuff that I have now achieved a level of mastery that allows me to be able to see it differently to my inner child, right? It's a card of Leo, and it speaks of children, but it also speaks of childhood too. And it also speaks of joy, the kind of joy that we used to experience when we were kids before we all became, old and jaded. Well, actually, for most of us, that happened in childhood, and certainly for Scorpios, that generally seems to happen in childhood too. There's a transcendence of your experience open and possible for you here, where, your childhood memories that were somewhat characterized by probably a lot of strain and emotional turmoil way back when, can be replaced with something altogether much more content in the here and now. The transcendence comes because you're not returning to childhood, because childhood was not good. Childhood was not enjoyable. But you're freeing up the inner child to go energetically do something else instead of trying to run your ship for you, But certainly there are shades of self-sabotage and all sorts of things in here that we can see. Let's just pull this up a second. Tell me about this Sun. Thank you. We have the Two of Wands and we have the Sun again. Okay, one more. Thank you. We've got Justice. This is all tying together just a little too neatly. We've got the Hermit card and the Temperance card here, right? Where you are going during this month, right? As uncomfortable as it may seem sometimes, and I don't have to talk to Scorpios too much about leaning into the discomfort, right? You get this, you understand it, right? There is healing at the other side of this journey, and it's not a huge one. This is not a year-long cycle where you're going to have to be just in a constant state of shadow work. This is just for now. Right? I would say possibly even just between now and the full moon, actually, is when all of this stuff is happening. Because you've arrived at somewhat of a crossroads, and it feels to me like your further growth is dependent upon releasing the child that is still trying to do certain things in here. Now, I don't know if I've explained this terribly well, but when you experience trauma as a child, in my opinion at least, what happens is your emotional range kind of stops right there. At the age that you were when this trauma happened, right? It just kind of stops there. And every time you come across a situation that in some way reminds you of that situation in the past. So, perhaps you Perhaps you grew up in a house with drunken parents who were always yelling at each other, right? And you kind of escaped relatively unscathed from it, moved out, became an adult. But if somebody shouts at you, that's an incredible trigger, right? And for some reason, it gets to you in a way that nothing else does. Even though, you might be, twice the size of the person that shouts at you. It's the energy that comes off it which triggers you and reminds you of your childhood, right? And then at that point, in that moment, you are back to being 6, 7, 8, 9 years old again, and you're like, what the fuck? And, freaking out. In any situation that involves something that triggers you, when you are triggered, it is no longer your conscious mind that is doing the heavy lifting. It is your subconscious mind. And, your nervous system is trying to keep you alive. There is a threat here. You have identified it. And, your subconscious has identified it. And your subconscious needs you to go do something else. It needs you to get out of the way. It activates the fight or flight response in you, So, in all sorts of situations, every day and in every way, there will be points where things happen where just for a moment, it's not the 25, 30, 35, 40-year-old, 50-year-old Scorpio who's dealing with this situation in front of them. It's a much, much younger, much less experienced version of Scorpio who is freaking out because it has touched a wound that still exists very deep within you, The crossroads that you're at is giving you the option of revisiting this so that you can release this inner child from doing all of that heavy lifting. It's not qualified to do it. It's not experienced enough to do it. And yet it kicks in, day out. Or if you're lucky, maybe it only happens, every month or so. But there will be something where a reaction in you is something that you can't quite explain. You don't quite know why you did it. Don't quite know why you said it. And that's the reason why. Right? Somebody much younger, much less experienced than you just took over the helm briefly and there was nothing you could do about it. But here's the Justice card, and this is the important thing because, it speaks to notions of natural law, it speaks to notions of balance coming in, and where your childhood was imbalanced and where this has created an imbalanced inner child of, within you, here is an opportunity to set that straight, right? This speaks of karma too. And again, if you haven't seen the video that I've got in the recommended videos, my friend Oashik did, No One Unscripted, on the notion of karma. It's the most beautiful, straightforward explanation of karma and how it works that I've ever come across in my life, and I would really recommend that you watch it, right? It's about the karmic consequences of growing up where you did, and the experiences that you've had, kind of coming here as an opportunity for them to be righted, right? Karma is just neutral. It is just the result of your consequences. The consequences of your actions, in fact. There we go. It's a really profound and powerful energy that you've got working here in front of you, if you choose to take it. Now, if you don't, and you always have the option not to, then what you can expect is the same things that trigger you are going to continue to trigger you for the rest of your life. You might do some work on it and you might make some breakthroughs, but the energy is specifically pointing at this for you this month. And just like every other sign that I've read for this month, there's a lot to do with getting out of your own way this month. There's a lot to do with identifying blockages and the ways that we react, the energies that we hold, sometimes to a fault, within ourselves, that those that are blocking us from moving forwards, getting absolutely eradicated this month, if we choose to do it. And if we do choose to do it, there's something really glorious and new on the other side waiting for all of us. Now, I don't actually know what is going on in the sky at the moment. I mean, literally, I don't know what's going on in the sky, but I actually meant planets and stuff. But I would not be surprised to find out that there is something, I don't know, maybe vaguely Saturn Pluto kind of doing somewhat of a little merry dance here. It's got that kind of feel about it. There is the opportunity for renewal and regeneration, but there is also the opportunity to put straight some karma of some sort that is appearing in front of you. I mean, we might dig into this in the extended a little bit more, but what you've got coming towards you in May is the Wheel of Fortune. Now, yes, this does speak to your fortunes improving. Absolutely, it does. Sometimes it can talk about them going the other way, but really, like right across the board, it feels like the wheel is on the up for everyone. But the other thing that this talks about for me is the opportunity to really learn something. You know, I said before, like I don't like the idea of karmic tests, because I think that gives some notion to the fact that you could either pass or fail, right? And it's not a binary situation, I don't think. And I always felt it was more like a syllabus, and that's actually how my friend No One Unscripted and I actually met, was because we were having a conversation about that very idea. It works more like a save point in a game, you know? So you kind of struggle for the first few levels, and you cock it up a few times, and you've got to go right back to the beginning and start again. But, you know, each time you do it a little bit better, right? Think of those as the cycles, the patterns that we're in. You know, when we try and break them, we cock up a few times and we have to start again, but we get through. And then before we know it, we've hit a save point. And then from that point on, it doesn't matter what you do. You will never go back any further than where you are right now. So you'll never have to go right back to the beginning. You just come back to the save point. This is what the Wheel of Fortune says to me here. There is a huge opportunity to, and I don't feel like I'm overstating this, to change your life this month, Scorpio, because we've got the Ace of Cups and the Page of Swords underneath here. Now, this feels to me a little like the heart and the mind working as one here, which I feel like those two things, particularly within Scorpios, usually are pretty off kilter. You know, there's what your heart wants to do, and then there's your mind telling you that you're afraid. Scorpios are sensitive. Scorpios are deep. Scorpios feel pain like no one else. And so what would you do? You would spend your entire life trying to avoid getting into any kind of situation that would expose you to that level of pain. This speaks to me to an improved relationship with yourself, but it also speaks to the way that Scorpios, like the water signs, are actually beautifully placed to be able to experience life heart first, right? Emotion first, everything else second. But where the two of them can work in harmony, you know? I said before, the pages feel to me like where the aces are the brand new, like there's the pure potential of that. And some readers exalt the aces, which is, you know, they're just so powerful they can't form part of the main reading. They have to be put, you know, above the reading, and the whole reading is interpreted in light of, you know, the shine that is coming off the ace above it. But the pages take something that already exists and they're taken in a different direction. That's how it feels to me. So what we've got here is this huge potential, this well of potential being tapped into here. And then we've got the mind, you know, going, okay, this is something that I know, this is something that I understand. I'm going to approach it differently, right? I'm going to do things a little differently to the way that I've done them before. I mean, part of it is perhaps even just the mind allowing the heart to open properly for the first time. Yeah. There are your clarifiers, ladies and gentlemen, both or neither. We have the Nine of Cups and the Ace of Cups, clarifying the Ace of Cups and the Page of Swords. This... Something in you is wanting to open. It's wanting to open wide, and it is the Ace of Cups for you, right? It is the chance for you to reach some kind of emotional fulfillment that has been missing in you, like up until this point. But the mind feels to me like it's choosing not to stand in the way anymore, and I do feel like it's because you are eradicating the very last blockages, the very last, bits of chunks of wood that have been put into the mechanism to stop it turning. They're being wrenched out, and now it feels like the wheel is turning. Like one of the decks that I've got, I think it's this one actually, the Wheel of Fortune is a series of cogs. And I really like that idea, everything just moving together as it should. We've got the Five of Cups at the bottom of the deck. That is a Scorpio card. It is a card of focusing on the wrong thing, becoming completely obsessed with the wrong thing. And for Scorpios, generally, that is the avoidance of pain, right? The avoidance of experiencing true emotion because of everything that comes with it. Except that, you really do feel like you're thinking differently to me now, right? There's almost part of you that is welcoming the pain, because with the pain comes the joy. You cannot have one without the other appearing somewhere, right? Well, you cannot truly appreciate joy if you have not known pain, right? It just becomes something very complacent, very expected, almost an entitlement of sorts. Like, why should I have to suffer? I don't know how to suffer. I don't know how to do this. Without the true experience of pain and loss and suffering, you cannot appreciate beauty and childishness and childlikeness. Joy, openness, vulnerability. All of these things that are so very necessary. Cool. This is a bigger reading than I expected, Scorpio. I'm going to bugger off now over to Vimeo. If you would like to join me over there, you are very, very welcome. I'm going to pull this apart a little bit because this feels massive. Interestingly, Sagittarius also had a massive reading in very much the same sort of vein. I mean, all of them have been quite similar, but it feels particularly profound for you. Or you could come over and join me at my Patreon community. It's such lovely people. They're an absolute blessing, I have to tell you. So, yeah, I'm going to go and do those things. If you don't want to join me over here, then that is also absolutely fine. Just know that there's going to be some difficult themes that come up this month, but what I really want you to do is lean into them. Do not try and get away from them. I don't think you will anyway, but just in case you're tempted. So, know that I love you all very, very much, and I will see you soon.